Okay, cool. So let's get started. So I'll invite you to come and lay in a comfortable position. So if you have your props, we'll lay on an incline. You can sit if you need to, but it's actually quite nice if we can recline back, especially when we start to do some pelvic floor stuff. So I have a bolster here on 2 pillows, or sorry, 2 blocks is what those are, but you can also have pillows up on a second pillow, just sort of elevating a little bit so that you can lean back without having to go all the way onto your back. So let's try that. And you can have your feet a little bit wider than your hips and let your knees fall together to start. But if you're more comfortable in some other shape with your legs, like a butterfly or just straight out, that's totally cool. And if you want to be in a different kind of position, like laying on your side or child's pose, those would work too, okay, especially just to get started. So when you get there, just taking a couple of nice deep breaths. Maybe sighing. And again, just noticing how you're feeling, which in pregnancy is usually a mixed bag. And for me, the theme that's really coming up is that as we're managing the discomforts of pregnancy, the strangeness of pregnancy, the anxieties, we're also noticing the sweet moments, noticing even that, especially later in pregnancy, there's this real feeling of like knowing that a big change is going to happen relatively soon. And so it's really important to kind of be present for the sweet moments that we still have in this precious time, which is temporary. And really being faced with that temporariness is a beautiful way of practicing non-attachment, which for me doesn't mean detachment. It really means being as present as you possibly can, because this moment won't last. Whatever it is that's happening, it's not going to be like this forever. So being with, and where we can, focusing on what's good without necessarily rejecting what's not so good. Just letting both sit side by side. So just taking a moment with that as we settle in. So we're going to spend some time today with our pelvic floors. We're going to get to know the pelvic floor a little bit more. And the first place that I'd love for us to do this is in relaxation, okay? So I just want you to bring your awareness down to your pelvic floor. So this is the net of muscles that runs from your pubic bone to your tailbone and in between your 2 sit bones. And the pelvic floor itself, it's not on the outside, it's just about, depending on your body, maybe an inch or so up from the surface. So it's just slightly internal. And naturally, it should move with your breath, okay? So on your inhale, you'll notice that your belly will rise to the sky. And as you exhale, the belly falls, and that's because the air is coming into your lungs and it's pressing your diaphragm down. So there's more pressure in the abdominal area, pressing everything down and out. And then as you exhale, the air leaves the lungs, the diaphragm lifts, there's less pressure there, and so everything kind of draws in. So if your belly were like a soft balloon, your pelvic floor would be the bottom of that balloon. So as you inhale, the pelvic floor, when it's functioning well, will actually expand a little bit and descend towards your feet. That's your inhale. And as you exhale, it draws in towards itself and up towards your heart. And that's not a contraction right now, it's just the natural movement of the pelvic floor. So just as you continue to breathe naturally, I'm going to invite you to see if you can relax around your genitals. Okay, and as you relax around your genitals, just see if you can detect movement. So there's a movement down and wide on the inhale. And on the exhale, there's this very gentle deflating kind of action in and up. And right now we're just relaxing. So we're just trying to see if the pelvic floor will actually do that, okay? So noticing if this area feels kind of numb for you, noticing if it feels like it's stuck or tight. Sometimes it takes a little bit of work to relax the pelvic floor. About half of us are too tight and about half of us are a little too weak. So, you know, we tend to be on one end of the spectrum somewhere. So just taking a moment first to get to know. Does it take concentration to relax your pelvic floor? Does it tend towards tension? And I will say the pelvic floor will tend to tense up with stress. It has an intimate relationship with our nervous system, okay? So relaxing this area with breath can also be really calming for the nervous system. So just noticing that. And if you are having that numbness or you're not really noticing a lot of movement, that's okay. Just imagine it'll start to build your relationship with this area. Okay, and then from here, we're going to start to work with a little bit of just a classic Kegel, okay? So nothing too crazy. And you can keep your legs as they are. Some people actually prefer doing this laying on the side, so this is that's a place where that you could try that as well. So as you inhale, relax pelvic floor, just like we've been talking about. And then as you exhale, gather your anus and your vagina up and in towards your heart, okay? And then as you inhale, relax that, allow them to descend and widen. Okay, so each exhale, I'm just gonna invite you to gather anus and vagina up. And on the inhale, we're releasing, we're relaxing. So this is obviously subtle. You can't see what I'm doing. Please don't be afraid to ask questions, okay? If you have any questions about this, just unmute yourself and let me know. And when we think about engaging, it's not bearing down, not like when you're trying to go to the bathroom. It's the opposite of that. It's like you're trying to gather everything up and in, okay? So there are different ways to think about it and different metaphors work for different people. So you can think about trying to pick up a blueberry with your vagina and pull it inside yourself. So that's one image, okay? And then as you inhale, just releasing as if you were dropping that blueberry. You could also think about if you had a tampon that was slipping out, as you exhale, could you gather it back in towards you, bring it deeper into your body? Okay. For some people, it helps to think about the sit bones gathering together. Okay, or even the fronts of the hip bones. For some people, it helps to think about that part gathering together. That's a little more transverse abdominis, but for some people, that helps get the action going. Okay. Now notice how this is going. It might feel really intense, or it might feel really challenging, or it might be kind of easy. So I'm just gonna get a little more subtle with you guys, but keep working with what's working for you. Just sort of start where you are. So continuing to work with breath, each exhale, we're gathering in and up. The pelvic floor actually has 8 different muscles involved with it. So there are different muscles for your urethra, vagina, and anus. So maybe considering, could I engage the muscles of my vagina without actually engaging the muscles around my anus, the back of the pelvis, or the back of the pelvic floor? Okay, and then next exhale, could I do the opposite, engage just the muscles around the anus and not the vagina so much? Now this is very subtle. It's going to be really hard, but we're just working our brains a little bit to see how much we can get to know pelvic floor. Okay. If all is still well, and if you're feeling like, whoa, this is a lot, I need a break, that's okay, take a break. The next time you exhale, let's try and hold the engagement for 2, 3, maybe 4 breaths. So see if you can still breathe nice and easily in the upper body, but just keeping that engagement at the pelvic floor. Okay, one of the things that's going to be happening during labor, if we have a vaginal birth, is trying to keep the upper body relaxed, and the pushing is going to be happening with these muscles of the lower body. It's the opposite of this. This is like holding baby in, okay? And then let's relax. Okay, I'm going to take a butterfly leg, so soles of the feet together, knees open wide. For some people, this helps relax the pelvic floor. It depends on your body, so see how it feels for you. And then just take a few breaths to stay relaxed. So relaxed on the inhale, relaxed on the exhale, no more contractions. Now, again, I super recommend seeing a pelvic floor physiotherapist during pregnancy. Just a way to think about it, you don't want to be engaging your pelvic floor 100% of the time, okay? That's not going to be functional for your body. Most of the time you want it to be relaxed or just kind of working with the movements that you're doing naturally in your body. And what my physiotherapist told me to do is 10 Kegels, so 10 of those contractions, holding them for 10 seconds each, and then 2 minutes of full relaxation afterwards to make sure I'm not holding on to that tension. That's a prescription for me, so it may or may not be appropriate for you, but just so you get kind of a sense of like what one might want to do in pregnancy, and that's to do once a day. Okay. So let's take a nice deep breath here. And then we'll add on a little bit, and do interrupt me if you have any questions, okay? So let's do this with a little bit of core. So we're gonna add the transverse abdominis. And these are muscles that we want to be strong to help to support lower back, baby, and will be helpful in pushing later on if we get there, okay? If we have a vaginal delivery. So step your feet to the floor, knees point up to the sky. As you inhale, again, relax like we talked about, but tip your pelvis forward so your belly expands up to the sky a little bit more and you're increasing the arch underneath your back. As you exhale, initiate from the pelvic floor, so gathering pelvic floor in and up, press the belly button down and flatten your back a little bit to the mat. Inhale, relax, pelvic floor widens, belly expands, arching the back. Exhale, gather pelvic floor in and up, hug baby towards heart, and lengthen the tailbone a little bit. Okay. And let's do that one more time. And sometimes I do notice actually my baby kicks when I do my Kegels and when I do my pelvic tilts. Seems to react to that. Okay. And then we'll come back to a nice neutral spine. So just nice and relaxed here. Inhale, and then as you exhale, engage. So gather that blueberry in and up. Okay, press baby up towards heart, but don't flatten the back. Just keep it nice and neutral. Hands on the pelvis. And then next time you inhale, lift up your right leg. And as you exhale, put it back down. Okay, lift up your left leg as you inhale. And as you exhale, put it back down. So this is a nice simple one. And you want to think about really stabilizing your pelvis. So as the legs are moving, try not to move your lower belly at all. So these are the deep stabilizer muscles. And you know, this is nothing like a sit-up or a crunch, which we generally don't want to do too much of during pregnancy, if at all. We want to really be working into these deeper muscles. So it shouldn't feel like a super intense exercise or anything, but just a place where we can kind of wake up these muscles. Yeah. And then next time you finish on the left side, again, relax. So you can take butterfly legs if you like that, or any shape. And just focus on relaxing pelvic floor, just letting go. Okay, you guys are doing great. We'll do one more and then we'll change our positions, okay? So set up the feet once again. I love this one right now. I find it so good for everything, especially pelvic floor. So feet are on the mat, knees are pointing up to the sky. Pick up your toes and keep them lifted so that they're nice and active. Again, find that engagement through pelvic floor, through transverse abdominis, so hugging baby in and up. Hands on the hips so that you can feel that the pelvis is nice and steady. And I like to put my peace fingers right on my hip points and just keep them steady there. So we're breathing up in the upper body a little bit more. Inhale, and as you exhale, open the right knee to the right. So we've done this one before in this series, okay? And then on the exhale, we're bringing it up through center. So some of this stuff is familiar to you guys, but we're just talking a little bit more explicitly about it today. Okay, left leg opens out to the left, and then bring it back up. Okay, so we're just doing, this is called knee falls. So the knee isn't collapsing all the way to the side, it's just going some degree open. You'll notice that you need to use your glutes a little bit at certain points in this exercise, and that's great. We want to use the glutes too. But here's the image I want you to think about. Okay, and again, if this is too subtle, just do the best you can. Okay, as the knee is coming up, I want you to imagine that you're using just that half of your pelvic floor. So it's almost like as my right knee comes up, the right side of my vagina is actually pulling the knee in from the center. Okay, and then as my left leg goes out, the left half of my vagina is doing the work of pulling up. So as you get more settled with this, you can actually feel the different parts of your pelvic floor. And this will be really useful info postpartum as well as things are kind of coming back together. So see if you can feel that, and maybe you can notice, oh, that's for me harder to do on my left side. And if you do go and see a pelvic floor physiotherapist, they can tell you things like that. Like, oh, your right side is a little more, activates a little more than your left side. So here we're just exploring that a little bit. Okay, so let's do about one more each side. And I know a lot of this work is concentration. It's not so much that it's a really big, intense movement, but we're thinking pretty hard. Okay, last one. Beautiful, and then relax. So soles of the feet together, knees open wide, or however works for you. Focus on relaxing pelvic floor. So on the inhale, expanding. On the exhale, relaxing. So some metaphors that some people like are, on the inhale, a flower blooming, okay? And on the exhale, just softening and receiving that sunlight. I like the image of a jellyfish, the way a jellyfish cap will expand in the water to bring in more water. And then it will close together to press the water out. We're not doing the contraction right now, but that's an image I like as well. And when we're in labor, if we do vaginal delivery, we want to think about that expanding action, yeah? So that there's space for baby to come out. Beautiful, you guys. Okay, so from here, let's step the feet about mat's distance apart, widen the arms, and then take some nice windshield wipers from side to side. And you might notice that your lower back feels a little bit different here. You might not. Okay, those exercises are really helpful for sacral pain, which is also super common in pregnancy. Okay, and then we can roll over to one side. So I'm on my right side here. I feel like my image is going a little bit dark here. The sun is kind of going in a weird place. I hope you guys can still see me. So I'm just going to lay on my right side. I've got my head in my hands, a little natural curve in my lower back, and my knees are together. And we're just going to do a little bit of outer hip strengthening, okay? So outer hips support pelvic floor, and they help to support the back and everything else as we're doing our, holding up our babies, okay? So flare the toes. We've done this one before too, I think, in this class. So clamshells, inhaling to open the knee and exhaling to close. Very light engagement in the pelvic floor. So one of the things that we can experiment with is, can I engage just 10%? Yeah. Press the feet into each other a little bit. Just one more here. Okay, and then relax. And pick up the feet, both of them. So the feet are still together. It's like there's a little hinge at the big toe. And then we're going to do that same clamshell, but we're a little bit elevated. So the feet stay together, just the knees come apart. Pressing the feet into each other a little bit, and try to keep your pelvis nice and steady so it's not rocking forward and back. And I'm just going to see if I can improve the lighting in here. I'm not sure if that's better or worse. Okay, and then let's relax. I think that's a little better. You guys can let me know. Okay, taking a nice deep breath right here. Can't remember if we've done this next one yet. It's a little uncomfortable, but it's really, really useful. So we're going to float the top leg, point the toes, so the foot is pointing down towards the bottom of the mat. And I've just got my top hand in front of me to support. Little bit of that engagement into the pelvic floor, and we're going to circle the leg. So it's like you're tracing a dinner plate or a basketball. Yeah, so not too high. Yeah. But seeing if you can go a little above your hip and a little below, a little in front and a little behind. Yeah. And then reverse directions. Take a break anytime you need to. If this is new to be doing these kinds of exercises, they might feel really hard. They get easier when you do them more often. So if you're getting fatigued, it's totally okay to take a break. Just got about 3 more circles. So good, you guys. And then relax, knees together. Big sigh. Okay, you can slip your knee in front of you a little bit if you like. My belly's a little too big for me to do that comfortably, but you can if you're comfortable there. And then make a soft fist with your top hand and just pat out that outer hip, just where you felt the work. And maybe down the thigh a little bit. Beautiful. And then gently press up to a seat. Okay, take your legs out in front of you. And then the leg that you were just working, so that's my left leg here, I'm going to place the ankle on top of the thigh, fingertips behind me, and then bend the right leg until I feel a little stretch. So it should feel like a stretch right in the spot that we were just working. Keep the foot nice and flexed, and if it feels good, you can rock a little from side to side. Yeah, so it's good to open as well as strengthen the hips in pregnancy. Beautiful. And then you can let that go. You can give the legs a little shake, and then let's come to the second side. So I'm coming over to my left side now. Holding your head in your hand, or you could rest your arm on, sorry, you could rest your head on your arm if that's more comfortable for you. Knees are together. Flare the toes and keep the hinge at the feet, so the feet don't separate. Slight engagement through pelvic floor core, doesn't have to be 100%. And then beginning to open and close the legs with the breath. Thinking about keeping the hip steady, and I find it's helpful for me to actually think about my top hip pressing forward a little bit, and I feel that more in the outer hip. And so again, these can be uncomfortable, but I am 99% sure this is the reason my lower back isn't hurting, because my belly is pretty big and heavy, and I'm waddling around, as many of you I'm sure are experiencing, with my belly kind of hanging out. And I've had lower back issues in the past, but I think because I've been doing this outer hip work, my hips are stable enough that I feel okay. So last one here, and relax. Good, and then try lifting the feet. You can also do that same clamshell again if it felt like enough, all right? Hinging at the feet and opening and closing. So again, trying to keep the pelvis nice and steady. And if you press the feet into each other a little bit, that's just, you're gonna feel it a little bit more. You may or may not need that, right? Depends on your hips. Really good. Last couple here. So nice, and then relax. Nice deep breath. Whew. Okay, last one, and then outer hip torture's over. Okay, extend that top leg, point the toes. Again, gently engaging through the core. You can use your top hand to support in front of you, and then taking some circles. Yeah, so pretty big circles, maybe a bit bigger than a dinner plate or a basketball. And just trying to get, again, a little ahead of the hip, a little behind, a little below, above, and a little below. And then we can reverse the direction of the circle. Just a couple more to go. You guys are doing great. For 3, 2, and relax. Really nice. Take a nice deep breath. And just remind yourself to relax pelvic floor. You can make that soft fist with your top hand. If you want, you can slip the knee in front if that's uncomfortable. Don't worry about it. And just gently pat out the outer hip. Beautiful. Nice job, you guys. And then softly press up to a seat. Extend your legs in front of you, and that same hip that you were just working, so that's my right hip here. You're going to take that ankle onto your opposite thigh, fingertips behind you, and just bend the leg until you feel a bit of a stretch. And you may or may not want to rock a little bit from side to side. I find it's kind of different for me on the two sides. On this side, I feel like I need to be still, or more still. So just honoring what feels right for you. Keeping the foot flexed.
Julie, I found on that second side, when we were doing the clamshells, it was hard for me to maintain stability. Like my hips were kind of wandering a bit. Is that pelvic floor or core or?
It's a little bit of both. So yeah, I think that would just be something to work on. Like if you're just feeling that that's a little bit challenging, like just engaging the core a little bit more, and that being the practice of just trying to keep the hips stable, and that should get easier over time. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that question. Okay, let's release the legs. You can give them a little shake. And then we'll come onto our hands and our knees. So we'll take cat and cow. And cat and cow is really a friend during pregnancy. So spread the fingers nice and wide, knees underneath the hips. You could be on fists if your wrists are sensitive here as well. And just inhaling to take a little back bend shape, letting belly kind of hang and relax. And on the exhale, rounding. So I love cat and cow sort of all the time. I think it's really beautiful and really useful in a lot of contexts. Then in pregnancy, it's really nice because it takes a little bit of the pressure off the pelvic floor, like we were talking about. And it kind of helps us to move the spine in some different ways. I find that I can't go as far. There's just a baby in the way. So I'm not as deep into it, but even just being in this position can be really helpful. We can also make circles here. We can move from side to side. And generally, this is like rocking the baby. Baby's like this kind of movement in the body. And just letting your breath be nice and deep. And here's a place where, especially on the inhale, in that back bend moment, you can relax your pelvic floor. And on the exhale and the rounding, you can practice engaging the pelvic floor if you want to, but you don't have to. Beautiful. Nice. And then let's come down to the elbows. So a shape like this, and there are a few different ways that you can do this shape. I'm just widening my knees a little bit. If you need a bit more space for your belly, you can widen your knees too. So this is a really nice position that's just a very mild inversion. So baby is slipping away from the pelvic floor. So we're taking pressure off of that pelvic floor. And this one is particularly useful if you are experiencing hemorrhoids, which are super common in pregnancy. If you feel comfortable, you could actually do your Kegels in this position, okay? So once a day, you could come into this position and focus on your Kegels here. So let's just try one or two and see how they feel for us, okay? If this feels like too uncomfortable, too vulnerable, you could do child's pose instead, okay? Or come back to the hands and knees if this is feeling like too much. And one of the reasons it can be nice to do Kegels in this position sometimes is because there's a little more focus on the back of the pelvic floor, okay? Which is why that's partially helpful if hemorrhoids is a thing that's happening for you. So as you inhale, soften, okay, relax, let the baby kind of slip away from pelvic floor. And then on the exhale, gather in the muscles of anus and vagina, drawing in. So you don't have to change your position, you're just engaging the pelvic floor, okay? And then inhale, relax, imagine your sit bones widening apart. Exhale, gathering in and up. So it's like you're snugging baby under your ribs almost. If your ribs are really uncomfortable, this might not be the best. Just a bit of a different way of being. Okay, let's try one more just for good measure. Magic 3. And just noticing how this is feeling for you. So depending on your body, sometimes it's nice to do Kegels in different shapes. It's just easier to feel them in different areas. Okay. And then we'll stay in this general shape, but we'll add a little bit more for the shoulders. So if you have a block like this one, you can put it in between your hands. If you don't, you can stretch your arms out and come up onto your fingertips. Okay, so those are two different ways of doing this. If you have a block in between your hands, I hope you guys can see that. I feel like my lighting is kind of going weird with the sun right now. Then you can walk your elbows forward or your knees back a bit and just pull your heart back towards your thighs. So you get this lovely chest opening. Forehead or chin can come down. And just nice deep breaths here. So we don't need to be engaging the core right now. Beautiful. And then let's take this into child's pose. So you can release your block. If you're using it, you might need to come up a little bit. I need to widen my knees quite a bit for my child's pose. And depending on, again, what's comfortable for you, maybe forehead comes down, maybe you're stretching your arms out or in between your legs. I like to just have my forehead resting on my stacked palms. For me, a lot of inverting hasn't felt that good for me in this pregnancy. So I like to keep my head just a bit elevated. And again, let's see if we can focus on relaxing that pelvic floor. Beautiful. Okay, from here, let's come back up to hands and knees and we can try a downward dog. So reaching the hands a little ahead of the shoulders, tuck the toes, and press the hips back and up. And then you can walk your dog. So bending one knee at a time, kind of massaging the calves and the feet. Okay, if inverting is not that comfortable for you, so for lots of pregnant people, it's totally fine. Okay, for me, having the head below the heart, it just feels a little intense. So sometimes I like to do this in and out. So I'll inhale my knees to the ground and take a little cow. And then on the exhale, I'll press up. And if downward dog is just not working for you, you could also stay on your knees and just extend one leg back at a time. That's another way just to release the backs of the legs without having to go all the way up. Okay, and then let's make our way to the top of the mat. So just walking your feet gently towards your hands. And my feet are about mat's distance apart at this point in my pregnancy. Okay, up to you. And I like to have my elbows just resting on my bent knees. And if it feels safe and comfortable, you could relax your head. You could give it a little shake. And then we'll climb up. So I like to walk my hands up my legs, just for a little extra support. Sorry, I'm kind of going dark in here, you guys. My lighting is different from what it was last week. See if that's better or worse. Okay, so from here, let's get a little bit of breath into our bodies. So just with your feet, hips distance or a little bit wider. Let's inhale, reaching the arms up to the sky. And then exhale, bend the knees generously and fold down. Halfway lift, drawing the shoulders onto the back, heart forward. Exhale and melt. Bend the knees, look forward, rise all the way up. You can lean back a little if that's comfortable. And bring hands to the heart. Inhaling, reaching up. Exhaling, diving down. So I love this one for calm, but also I find it's really nice for mood lifting. Halfway lift and fold. Just a nice simple sequence with the breath. Rising up on your inhale. And as you exhale, hands to heart. Let's take about one more. Feel free to go at your own pace. You don't have to go at mine. And eventually we're back in standing. You can let your hands rest by your sides, or if you want to, you could put your hands on your belly. And just taking a moment to feel yourself in standing, and maybe noticing after all of that work that we've done that there's this kind of pelvic girdle that's actually holding you up a little bit more with all of that awareness that we talked about, holding baby up a little bit more. Okay, so from here, step up to the top of your mat and take a nice big step back with your right foot. I'm going to disturb my dog here. Just get it between his feet. So have your heel lifted up really nice and high over the roots of your toes. Bend both knees to start and draw the tailbone down. So a little bit of a stretch in the front of the thigh is great. For some people, this causes round ligament pain if we go too deep. So if you're feeling something uncomfortable in your pelvis, just bend the knee more, okay? And then reach your arms up and then try interlacing them, taking the wide palms to the back of your head and just letting your chest open. Really digging the right foot into the mat so you actually feel a stretch in the foot there. And breathing into this nice little bit of a back bend. Maybe noticing the outer hips can hug together a little bit more after doing all those clamshells. Awesome. Okay, inhale, and then as you exhale, turn to face the long edge of your mat. My dog's still asleep there. Turn your toes to face out on a little bit of a 45-degree angle, nice wide stance for the legs. Reach your arms up to the sky, and as you exhale, bend the knees and the elbows. So this is a pose called goddess. Okay, inhale, reaching up. Exhale, bending knees and elbows. Okay, one more time like that. Okay, stay with the knees bent. Any amount is fine. Bring your hands to your upper thighs or mid thighs. See what feels best for you. Reach one arm, this is my right arm, up to the sky and begin side bending. If you're comfortable, you could bring your elbow all the way down to your thigh. You don't have to. Okay, drawing the tailbone down a little bit and stretching along that side waist. Okay, up through center. You can straighten your legs, especially if you're feeling that work in your thighs. And then bend again. And we'll go to the other side. Left arm reaches up. Maybe you're staying up high, or maybe you're bringing your elbow right down. And I'm just bending my knees a little bit more to help me do that. Awesome. Back up through center, straighten the legs. Nice deep breath here. And then widen your heels apart so that your toes face forward and your outer feet are parallel with each other. Okay, let's try interlacing the fingers behind the back, or you could use your strap to hold on to here if your shoulders are a little on the tight side. Okay, pull the strap or the hands apart, open the chest. And then let's try a forward fold. So letting the fists rise to the sky as the head comes down. Again, for me, that's a little too much of an inversion. So I'm just gonna bring my hands down, and I actually like them on blocks. And instead, I'm gonna bring my hands forward and melt my heart back towards my thighs. So that's an inversion that works a little more sustainably for me. So feel free to try that. If you're comfortable with the fingers interlaced behind your back, that's awesome. Do it that way. A little bit for the hamstrings here. This is another inversion that takes a bit of pressure off the pelvic floor, and it might help to bend the knees a little bit. Nice. Okay. Beautiful. Release your hands if you haven't. Bring them underneath your shoulders. Bend the knees a little more and engage belly. So hug baby up towards the spine, and then stand up. And just turn to face the right. So we're just going to do that lunge on the second side. So I want your left foot to be back behind you now. And go ahead and widen your stance as needed, okay? Again, up on the roots of the toes, so you're stretching the foot. Bend both knees to start. Draw tailbone down, and you can work that back leg towards straight, but if you're getting pain in the pelvis, just ease off. Reach up, interlace the fingers, bring them to the back of your head, and lean your head back into your hands any amount, opening the elbows, like winging them open. Squeeze your left thumb and think of hugging the outer hips together a bit. This is our last standing pose, just FYI. One more inhale. And then gently release, hands to hips, and you can step the feet together, so whichever way you're facing is fine. And take a moment just to come back to standing. Noticing how you're feeling in the legs, the hips, the shoulders. Beautiful. Let's reach the arms up. Exhale, dive down, and then come back to your hands and your knees. And you can take a couple more of those cat and cows, or if you'd rather just come into child's pose, that's a great option too. Beautiful. All right, and then let's come to a seat. So you can sit up on one of your props. I'm sitting cross-legged, but you can sit really any way you like. Give our neck and shoulders a little love. So take your arms open into a cactus. And then squeeze the shoulder blades together as you inhale, so opening the chest. And as you exhale, bring the pinky edges of the arms together towards touching. Okay, and then inhale, open, palms can face forward, squeeze the shoulder blades down the back. Exhale, bring the pinky edges of the arms to touch if you can. We'll just do that one more time. Good. And then open back up into that cactus. So I'm going to try to mirror you. Right arm under the left. Hold opposite shoulders, or wrap the hands into an eagle shape so the wrists kind of twist high. See if that feels comfortable for you. Holding opposite shoulders is great. Draw the shoulders down the back, tuck your chin in a little bit, and then bring your right ear towards your right shoulder. So this should feel like quite a delicious neck stretch. You can tip the chin down or up. It'll give you different sensations there. And then come up through center and just bring your head to the other side so you're still in the same mudra with your arms. Shoulders nice and heavy. Good. And then back to center. Gently unwind. Take your arms open into that cactus shape again. And then you can interlace them around behind your back or grab your strap if it's handy. We won't be here too long. Hugging the elbows together and pressing the heart up to the sky. Good. And then gently release. Come back to that cactus shape, and we'll do that on the second side. So left arm wraps under the right one, holding opposite shoulders, or twist high the wrists if appropriate. There should be no pain in your shoulders here. Hugging the shoulders down the back, tuck your chin in a little bit, and then bring your left ear towards your left shoulder. And just breathing here. Again, tipping the chin down or up will give you different sensations. And then back up through center and over to the other side. So keep the arms just releasing the opposite side of the neck. Just noticing it's probably going to feel different on the two sides. And then up through center. Gently release the arms. You can open them into that cactus, just squeezing, and then interlace the fingers last time around behind the back and give yourself a little hug. And then gently release hands to the lap. And you can take a couple of shoulder rolls here. And maybe turn your head from side to side. Good. Okay, so let's make our way into Shavasana. So there are lots of different ways to do this. Okay, you can do the incline that we started with if that feels good, laying back on some props, but you could also take Shavasana with your hips a little bit elevated. So there are a couple different ways to do that. One is child's pose. If you're comfortable in child's pose and you want to stay there, that's great. Another shape that might work for you, it's a little awkward in pregnancy and it doesn't work for everyone, but supported bridge. So this one actually requires that you lay down on your back for a moment and then you lift your hips up and place something underneath your hips. So for some people, the hip elevation is so nice, and because you're a bit elevated, you don't get that weird vena cava thing. So you can try it if you want. But just make sure it actually works for you. So to come to lay on your back, you would come on your side, roll back, and then right away, lift your hips and put your bolster, your block or something under, and then just notice how that feels. So if it's comfortable, if you're not getting dizzy woozy, that's cool. But if it is, then you're gonna lift up, come off, roll to your side, and take a different option. Okay, some of you remember from last week a restorative pose. So we had a bolster under the waist and a prop underneath the head. And then your arm goes in between. And ideally, you would also have something between your knees. So this is a really nice sleeping position, actually. On the left side is what's recommended, but really either side is fine. Whatever feels more comfortable for you. And you can let that be your Shavasana too. So feel free to experiment a little bit, see what feels most comfortable. And then when you get there, I want you to come back briefly to your pelvic floor. Imagining it expanding as you inhale. And as you exhale, just relaxing even more deeply. You could also imagine that as you breathe, you're giving baby more space in the front and also below baby. And then let even that go. Just taking a moment to notice how you're feeling right now. Like we talked about at the beginning, we want to make sure that we're honoring what feels sweet and delicious, alongside honoring what feels less comfortable. And so just take a moment to notice what feels good. If you feel any softer or more relaxed or more easeful, just really let yourself have that. When you're ready, you can begin to deepen the breath a little bit. Wiggle the toes and fingers, maybe rocking your head side to side, depending on how you're resting. You could take a bit more of an active stretch, again, depending on where you are, maybe reaching your arms up, legs out long. Gathering in the knees. If you're in supported bridge, just gently lifting the hips, sliding that prop out, and then rolling to your side. If you're on the incline, rolling to your side. If you're already on your side, you're there. And then gently, in your own time, coming up to a seat. And then you could put a hand on your heart, hand on baby. Or wherever else feels right for you. And then gently bowing your mind to your body, just taking a moment to really honor and acknowledge everything that's happening inside of you, the incredible work that your body is doing without your conscious control. To honor and acknowledge the long lineage of teachers that is with us when we practice our yoga. And again, to honor and acknowledge the sacredness of the land that we practice on, wherever in the world that may be. Thank you for your practice today. Namaste. Thanks so much, everyone. So do let me know if you have any thoughts or feedback or questions. I'll stick around for a few minutes. This is a nice time to ask each other questions too, if you have any. One of the things that I will check in with you guys about is if you want a Facebook group or if you want a CC email or something so you have each other's info. I think that's all I need to tell you for this week. So I can stop the recording here.